All right, everyone. George Soros has been in effect banned from the Philippines. That's what we're talking about on today's video. But before we do, just a few more days for you to get my book, Uprising, How the Yellow Vest Protests Are Changing France and Overturning the World Order, free for a limited time as an ebook download at the link below. If you want to understand really what's at the heart of perhaps the single greatest threat to the globalist world order going on today, then this is the book for you. You'll discover the political, economic, and cultural dynamics that are behind the Yellow Vest Uprising, why those dynamics are only getting stronger, and what it means for a new political order, not just in France, but for Europe as a whole. It's an absolutely free gift to you for just a couple of more days. I only ask that you please leave a review on the Amazon book page, which will help so much with Amazon's promotion of the book, and I cannot thank you enough for that. All right, great stuff, gang. I don't know how many of you have been keeping tabs with what's been going on in the Philippines of late, but really, the Philippines have been fully immersed in this massive shift to the nationalist populist right that we're seeing all over the world. The president is, of course, Rodrigo Duterte, and a number of articles and even a major academic book have been dedicated to understanding the rise of nationalist populism in the Philippines as embodied by the Duterte presidency. And I know that for those of us on this channel, all we need to know about Duterte's populist bona fides is that he has one of his chief enemies, the ultra-notorious George Soros. And this for a number of reasons, particularly Duterte blames Soros for crashing the Southeast economy through his ruthless currency speculation. And Duterte has been merciless in his crackdown on drug trafficking in the Philippines, which goes against Soros's global attempts to legalize drugs. Now, Soros was planning on visiting the Philippines in what he was calling a humanitarian visit, whatever that means. But upon hearing of it, Duterte publicly warned Soros that if he steps one foot in his country, that there's a bounty on his head in these islands. Now, what makes his warning extra ominous is that the Philippine House of Representatives recently approved a proposal just a couple of weeks back to reinstate the death penalty. So in light of that, Duterte went even a step further. He said there's a special place in hell for George Soros, the idiot. And if he sets one foot in this country, it's going to be Duterte's duty to send him there. So obviously, we're seeing some rhetorical parallels between Duterte and other populist leaders throughout the world, speaking straight, speaking the language of the people against Soros and the corrupt politicians and oligarchs that use their money and power to manipulate politics and economy in their own favor, which is so often at the expense of national identity and culture and custom and tradition. And this is precisely why Duterte came into power in the first place back in 2016. A number of scholars have recognized that the Duterte presidency is the result of a distinctively Filipino backlash against globalization, an insurrection against globalist systems. Now, of course, the Philippines have had their share of globalist projects invade their shores. I mean, most recently Japan during World War II. But at the beginning of the century, globalist forces began seeing the Philippines as having amazing untapped potential. As one scholar put it, the World Bank and international investors heralded the rise of what was becoming one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And yet, to the shock of globalist theorists, after all of this economic growth, Filipinos turned to an otherwise little-known mayor to be their next president back in their 2016 election. They turned to Rodrigo Duterte, who ran on a campaign of draining the swamp in Filipino politics, cracking down on crime and its illegal drug trafficking. And when he came to power, he spoke the language of the people. He insulted politicians as incompetent crooks and threatened to shut down the Philippine Congress. He's amassed an 80% approval rating, which was just solidified with the equivalent of the Philippines midterms elections a few weeks back. Duterte saw virtually all of his backed candidates elected to the Philippine Senate, which has given Duterte an effective majority in the Philippine Congress, which he'll use to tighten his populist grip and nationalist agenda for the Philippines. Now, key to all of this, I think, is how the Philippines is a further refutation of the notion that economic deprivation is what's driving the nationalist populist revolt. Many theorists, particularly from the political left, they think this is all economically driven, that once nations become economically stable, right, then the populist movement should fizzle out. The problem with this view is that, for example, in Europe, the nationalist populist right enjoyed its greatest successes before the 2008 financial crisis. And nations actually that were already experiencing rather strong economic growth, just like the Philippines. So for example, in Britain, Nigel Farage and his self-proclaimed People's Army first stormed the political stage in the European parliamentary elections back in 2004. And this was after 48 consecutive periods of economic growth, drawing tremendous support from rather affluent conservatives. Since then, the nationalist populist right has begun taking over more the blue-collar industrial voter. This is especially the case as well in Scandinavia, as well as Switzerland. They both saw the rise and electoral success of nationalist populist parties long before 2008. And France as well, with the rise of the Nationalist Front, whose first electoral breakthrough was in the 1980s. So 2008 and the financial crisis has certainly exacerbated the economic fears and anxieties, but the rise of the nationalist populist right was going on long before that. There's something deeper going on here, and it's precisely what we're seeing in the Philippines. While the Philippines have experienced enormous economic growth over the last couple of decades, no question, that growth has in many respects only continued to increase the gulf between the aristocratic elites who are in power and the citizens as a whole. The elites seem to operate by a completely different set of rules that benefit only them, all the while the resources for the sustainability of that system come from the overly taxed populace who find the system increasingly benefiting everyone else except them. And this cultural divide, right, that's key. It's not so much economic, though, of course, there are economic factors involved. But this cultural divide between the elites and the populace is becoming fertile ground for the rise of the nationalist populace, right? And that's precisely what we're seeing here in the Philippines of late. So needless to say in all this, this is not the world that George Soros has been paying for. This isn't the world that his billions of dollars spent on left-wing globalist causes was meant to inaugurate. Whether he likes it or not, the world is becoming more and more of an inhospitable place for the likes of a George Soros. He's already been banned from Russia. He's been banned from Hungary, from Poland, from Turkey. He's even been banned, interestingly enough, from Pakistan, which of course raises the question now, which nations are going to expel him next after the Philippines? This is something that Soros and his cronies are going to have to get used to. In a world that's turning more and more to nation, culture, custom, and tradition as the basis for a sustainable social order, the ultra-liberal globalist vision of Soros will not only appear more and more implausible and futile, it'll actually begin to be seen more and more as a threat, a very real threat to the unity and stability of a conservative, nationalist, traditionalist vision of life, which will only invite not only his condemnation within a nation, but indeed his expulsion as well. So, sorry, Georgie, time to make way for the new nationalist normal. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to download my latest book on the Yellow Vest Uprising, free for just a few more days at the link below. And while you're there, check out some of our new merchandise on the links below, celebrating all things nationalist, populist, and traditionalist. You'll love a lot of our coffee mugs and t-shirts and the like. And please click on either our Patreon, subscribe to our PayPal links below, and consider becoming a monthly supporter of this channel and help us to continue to analyze current events in light of awesome conservative trends so that you could personally and professionally flourish. God bless.